She was 9 years old on her knees in the dirt picking up coins, while a teenager poured lemonade over her head. Beg harder, he laughed. Maybe your brother will walk if you cry louder. Her brother screamed from his wheelchair. Helpless, trapped, broken. Their father was dead. Their mother worked the surgery cost $45,000. The jar held $3.75. But somewhere down the road, 70 engines were already rumbling. 70 men had already heard. And when the iron disciples ride for a child, the ones who made her crawl will learn what it means to kneel. The jar held $3.75. Rosie Mae Darnell counted it twice just to be sure. 3 crumpled dollar bills, 2 quarters, 2 dimes, 1 nickel. Not enough for anything that mattered. But she set up her table anyway. The table was a piece of plywood balanced on 2 milk crates. The pitcher was plastic chipped at the rim, filled with something that was mostly sugar and only vaguely lemon. The sign was cardboard, the letters crooked and misspelled in 2 places, written in purple marker, because that was the only one that still worked. Lemonade 50 cents. Help my brother walk again. Rosie, her brother's voice came from the porch, thin and tired. It's 98 degrees out here. I know you've been standing since 7. I know, Colton. Mama's going to kill you for being out here in the heat. Colton Darnell gripped the wheels of his chair. 11 years old, pale as paper, thin as wire. His legs hadn't moved in 8 months. Not since the accident. Not since the world cracked in half and swallowed everything good. This is stupid, he said. No, it's not. The surgery cost $45,000. You're selling lemonade for 50 cents. Then I'll sell 90,000 cups. Colton opened his mouth, closed, it opened it again. That's not how math works, Rosie. I don't care how math works. She poured lemonade into a paper cup, spilling half of it across the plywood. I care about you walking again. She marched the cup up to the porch and shoved it into his hands. Drink. Colton looked at the cup, looked at his sister. Her face was red from heat, her hair stuck to her forehead in dark ropes, her eyes daring him to argue. He drank. Well, Rosie demanded. Colton gagged, tried to hide it, failed. This is just sugar with a little lemon somewhere in the background. Is that bad? It's terrible. But you're drinking it. Colton took another sip. His eyes watered. Yeah, I am. The first customer showed up 20 minutes later. Mrs. Caldwell walked slow, her cane tapping the sidewalk in a rhythm as old as the town itself. 73 years old, lived on Pecan Street her whole life. Knew everybody's business and most of their secrets. She stopped at the table, read the sign. Her face changed the way faces change when something breaks inside the chest. How much does the surgery cost, sweetheart? $45,000, ma'am. Silence, the kind that weighs something. Mrs. Caldwell reached into her purse, pulled out a $5 bill, and pressed it into Rosie's hand. It's not enough. Lord knows it's not nearly enough, but it's what I have. She took her cup and walked away, didn't look back. Her cane tapped the sidewalk and the sound got smaller and smaller until the heat swallowed it. Rosie stared at the $5 bill. Her hand shook. Colton, she ran to the porch. $5. She gave me $5. Colton took the bill, turned it over. His throat tightened. That's great, Rosie. At this rate, we'll have enough in... He stopped, tried to calculate. In about 9,000 days. Rosie's face fell. Oh. Colton handed the bill back and forced a smile. But hey, that's 5 more than we had this morning. Rosie nodded slowly. Then she turned around and marched back to her table. She would stand there until dark. She would stand there until the sun burned her skin and the heat made the asphalt shimmer like water. She would stand there because her brother couldn't stand it all. The truck driver came an hour later. Big man beard like a brush fire, tattoos crawling up both arms. He'd seen her from the gas station across the road and walked over with the kind of deliberate pace that said he'd already made up his mind about something. What are you selling, kid? Lemonade, 50 cents. He read the sign, read it again. Something shifted behind his eyes. What happened to your brother? Rosie's voice went flat like she'd rehearsed this 100 times in her head. Car accident 8 months ago. A truck ran a red light. My daddy swerved to save Colton. She paused, swallowed. Daddy didn't make it. Colton can't walk. The driver didn't move for a long time. Then he pulled out a 20. I'll take 3 cups. That's only $1.50. I know. He stuffed the bill in the jar. Keep it. Rosie frowned. Why? He crouched down eye level so close she could see the lines around his eyes and the way they carried something heavy. Because I got a daughter your age, and if she ever needed help, I'd pray to God someone would do the same. He took his cups and walked away, left boot prints in the dust that the wind erased within minutes. $25 in the jar now, still not enough. Not close to enough. But something else was in that jar too. Something that couldn't be counted or folded or stacked. Something that felt like the beginning of a sound that hadn't been named yet. Jolene Darnell got home at 11:30 that night. Her uniform smelled like grease and bleach and the particular exhaustion that seeps into fabrics when a body has been moving for 18 straight hours. Her feet were swollen inside shoes that had been cheap to begin with and were now held together by will and habit. Her hands were cracked from scrubbing hospital floors, then folding sheets at the laundromat, then washing dishes at the truck stop diner on Route 9. 3 jobs, 18 hours, every single day. Still drowning. She pushed open the door, expecting darkness. Instead, she found Rosie on the kitchen floor, coins spread around her like fallen stars. Baby, Jolene froze. What are you doing up? Counting. Counting what? Rosie held up a handful of coins, her small fingers tight around them, as if they might escape. $27.50. I made it today. Jolene's heart stopped. Not the medical kind. The kind that happens when something so unexpected enters a room that the body needs a moment to decide whether it's joy or grief. Made it how? Rosie told her everything. The lemonade stand, Miss Caldwell, the truck driver. 6 hours in the sun with no shade and no help and no reason to believe it would matter. When she finished, Jolene pulled her into her arms and held on like the house was on fire, and this child was the only thing worth saving. Oh, baby, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Sweetheart, Colton needs his surgery, but this isn't your burden. Rosie's voice went fierce the way small things become fierce when they have no other choice. You worked so hard, Mama. I wanted to help. Jolene closed her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks and landed in her daughter's hair. Do you know how much the surgery costs? $45,000. And do you know how long it would take to... I don't care. Rosie pulled back. Her eyes were fire. I don't care if it takes forever. I'll stand out there every single day until we have enough. Jolene looked at her daughter, 9 years old, exhausted, stubborn as the earth itself. And for the first time in 8 months, Jolene saw something she'd almost forgotten existed. Fight. Okay, she whispered. Then we fight together. Down the hallway, Colton listened from his doorway. He'd wheeled himself there when he heard voices, and now he sat in the dark hallway, catching every word. He wheeled himself back to bed. The chair squeaked against the floor, the only sound in the quiet house. He pulled himself onto the mattress, arranged his useless legs, stared at the ceiling, the way he did every night, counting the cracks and wishing they were stars. 8 months ago, he was a normal kid. Rode bikes, played baseball in the lot behind the hardware store, raced his friends down Pecan Street until his lungs burned and his legs screamed and it felt like flying. Then the accident. He remembered the screech first. Then the crunch of metal, which didn't sound like metal at all, but like the world tearing at a seam. He'd been riding home from practice, cut across the intersection on Garrison Road without looking. The truck came out of nowhere, or rather, it came from exactly where trucks always come from, but Colton hadn't been watching. His father was driving behind him. Wade Darnell, 42 years old, Army veteran, 2 tours overseas. The strongest man Colton had ever known. The kind of strong that wasn't just muscle, but something deeper. Something that lived in the spine and the jaw, and the way he said, I've got you, and you believed it every time. When Wade saw the truck barreling toward his son, he did the only thing a father could do. He put his car between the truck and the bike. The impact killed him instantly. Colton survived, his spine didn't. Now his 9-year-old sister was selling lemonade in the Texas heat because he hadn't looked before crossing. Because their father loved him enough to die. Because love sometimes is the cruelest math of all. The guilt was a fist around his heart, squeezing every day, every night, in the spaces between sleep and waking, where the truth couldn't be softened by daylight. He reached under his pillow, pulled out the letter he'd started last week. "I'm sorry," it began. "This is all my fault. Maybe it would be easier for everyone if I just—" He read it 3 times, then shoved it back under the pillow. "Not tonight, but maybe soon." Day 2, 7 in the morning. Rosie was back at her table. The heat was already brutal, the kind of heat that Texas wears like a dare. Her lips cracked before 9. Her skin burned before 10. By 11, she'd made $8, and her shadow had shrunk to almost nothing beneath her feet. That's when the dirt bikes showed up. 4 of them, all teenagers. Trent Garner in front, 16 years old, baseball cap, backward, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with happiness. He spotted the stand and grinned the way certain people grin when they see something small and undefended. "Hey, look at this." His friends circled the table on their bikes, kicking up dust. Rosie grabbed her jar and held it to her chest. "Lemonade 50 cents. Trent snatched the sign from the table, read it aloud in a mocking voice. "Help my brother walk again." He laughed. "What, he's crippled? Give that back. Answer me." "He was in an accident. He needs surgery. Give it back." Trent showed the sign to his friends. "She's trying to save a cripple with lemonade." They howled like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all summer. On the porch, Colton gripped his wheels. "Leave her alone." Trent's head snapped around. He saw Colton, thin, pale, trapped in his chair like something caught. And Trent's grin got wider because cruelty, once it finds a target, doesn't stop. It escalates. "There he is." He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Hey, cripple, how's it feel having your baby sister beg for you?" "I'm not begging," Rosie shouted. "I'm selling." "Same thing." Trent grabbed the jar from her hands. "No." Rosie lunged for it. Trent held it high above her head. "Jump for it, beggar, jump!" His friends laughed. Rosie jumped. Again. Tears blurred her vision, but she wouldn't stop reaching. Colton tried to wheel down the ramp. His arms were too weak, the angle too steep. He could only watch. "Please," Rosie begged. "That money is for my brother." Trent looked in the jar. $8. He snorted. Pathetic. He turned it upside down. Coins scattered across the dirt like small silver screams. Rosie dropped to her knees, scrambling, grabbing quarters, dimes, pennies from between pebbles and cracks and dust. Her hands shook. Her tears fell and mixed with the dirt. Trent threw the empty jar at her feet. "Have fun saving your brother, beggar." They rode away laughing. The sound of their engines faded into the heat and left behind a silence that felt like a wound. Rosie didn't stop until she found every coin. Her knees were bloody. Her face was wet. But when she stood up, her eyes weren't sad. They were hard. Colton had finally made it down the ramp. "Rosie, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I'm fine." She wiped her face, left a streak of dirt across her cheek like war paint. $8.12. I found it all. "Rosie," Colton's voice cracked. "I'm sorry, this is all my—" "Stop." "But it's true, Dad died because of me. You're out here because of me. Mom works herself to death because we love you." Rosie's voice hit him like a thrown stone. "Daddy loved you, so he saved you. Mama loves you, so she works. I love you, so I'm selling stupid lemonade and stupid heat." She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking, but her voice didn't waver. "So don't you ever say it's your fault, Colton Darnell. Don't you ever." Colton stared at her, tiny, fierce, covered in dirt and blood and tears and something that looked a lot like fire. "I found your letter," Rosie whispered. Colton went cold, the kind of cold that starts in the stomach and spreads outward until everything is ice. "What, under your pillow? I read it last night." Her voice shook, but her eyes held steady. "You said maybe it would be easier if you weren't here." "Rosie, don't you ever think that again." She grabbed his hands, held tight, her small fingers wrapping around his like chains. "You hear me? I would sell lemonade until I was 100 years old for you. I would sell it until I died. So don't you ever think about leaving me." Colton couldn't breathe. The world blurred and all he could see was his sister's face burning with something that was bigger than anger and deeper than love and fiercer than anything he had ever known. "Promise me." Rosie's eyes bore into his like drill bits. "Promise you won't leave." I promise. The words came out broken, shattered at the edges. I promise, Rosie. She threw her arms around him. Two kids against the world, holding on like the world was trying to tear them apart, and maybe it was. 5 miles outside of Dusty Ridge on a stretch of highway where the pavement turned to gravel and the gravel turned to dust, there stood a bar called Rusty's. The parking lot was a museum of chrome and leather. 70 Harley Davidsons, 70 men inside, iron disciples. At the center table nursing a whiskey he hadn't finished in an hour sat the man they called Ironside. His real name was Flint Graves, 52 years old, built like a thing designed to survive impact. Gray beard, scarred knuckles, eyes that had seen 3 wars and come back from each one carrying pieces that didn't fit together anymore. He'd earned the name in Afghanistan, survived so many explosions his squad started saying he was already dead, just too stubborn to lie down. Came home with medals he kept in a drawer and nightmares he kept everywhere else. Came home to a daughter named Nora, who made all of it worth surviving. Then leukemia came. Nora was gone at 7, her laugh which had sounded like water over stones, her hands which were always reaching for something, her voice which called him daddy, in a way that made the word sound like the most important word ever invented. That was 15 years ago. Ironside started the Guardian Angel program the day after her funeral. Their mission was simple: protect children who can't protect themselves. 200 kids saved since then, pulled from homes where fists did the talking, stood guard at custody hearings where the wrong parent was winning, made sure predators understood that some prey came with very dangerous friends. Now he sat in silence listening to the bartender talk. "Breaks your heart," the bartender said, wiping a glass that was already clean. "Little girl on Pecan Street, can't be more than 9, selling lemonade for her brother's surgery. He's in a wheelchair. Car accident. Father died of saving him." Ironside's grip tightened on his glass. And yesterday, Trent Garner and his punk friends showed up, dumped her money in the dirt, called her brother a cripple, poured lemonade over her head. The table went quiet, the kind of quiet that happens before storms. Kid just kept picking up her coins. Didn't quit, didn't cry. Well, she cried, but she didn't stop. Ironside set down his glass. "Where Pecan Street, blue house on the corner, can't miss it." "Boomer." A massive man looked up. 45 arms like bridge cables, vice president of the chapter. "Yeah, boss, get Mole. I want everything on this family. Names, history, all of it." We riding on Ironside was quiet for a moment. Then not yet. First we see what this town's made of. Day 3, the boys came back with water balloons. They pelted Rosie's stand until the sign was soaked, the ink running in purple streams down the cardboard until the words disappeared. Day 4. Someone knocked over her table while she was inside getting more sugar. Cups shattered on the sidewalk like small white explosions. Day 5. Trent Garner's mother posted on Facebook, "Someone should call the health department on that little stand. No permit, no hygiene, probably illegal." 42 likes. Day 6, Genevieve Whitmore arrived. White Mercedes, blonde hair that cost more than Jolene made in a month. A face that had been lifted and filled and smoothed until it looked less like a face and more like a decision. She stopped right in front of Rosie's table, rolled down her window, and looked at the child the way certain people look at things that have wandered out of their proper place. "Little girl, what do you think you're doing?" Rosie straightened. "Selling lemonade. 50 cents. Genevieve read the sign, her lips curled. "For your brother's surgery. How sad." She leaned out. "Does your mother know you're begging?" "I'm not begging, I'm selling." "Same thing, sweetheart. You're asking strangers for money because your family can't provide." Her eyes swept over Rosie. Worn clothes, dirty knees, chipped pitcher, a child-sized empire of desperation. Some families just aren't meant to be saved. Rosie's face burned. "That's not true." "Oh, honey." Genevieve's voice was honey and arsenic. "Look at you. Look at your house. Look at your crippled brother." She nodded toward the porch where Colton sat rigid in his chair. "Your mother should be ashamed using her children to beg for scraps. My mother works 3 jobs. And yet," Genevieve started rolling up her window. "Here you are." She drove away. The Mercedes turned the corner and vanished, leaving behind the smell of expensive perfume and the particular cruelty of someone who has everything telling someone who has nothing that they deserve it. Rosie stood alone, shaking. That night, Jolene found her on the kitchen floor, not counting coins this time, crying. Baby, Jolene dropped down beside her. What happened? Rosie told her everything, the bullies, the water balloons, the broken cups, the woman in the Mercedes who said they were pathetic, who said Jolene should be ashamed. She said, we're not worth saving, Mama. Jolene's jaw went tight. She knew Genevieve Whitmore. Everyone in Dusty Ridge knew Genevieve Whitmore. Complained if a leaf from someone else's tree touched her lawn. Got 2 families evicted from their rentals for lowering property values. Chaired the homeowners association like it was a war council. Listen to me. Jolene cupped Rosie's face in her cracked hands. That woman knows nothing about us. Nothing about what it means to fight, to sacrifice, to love so hard it hurts. Then why did she say those things? Because people like her are afraid of people like us. Rosie frowned. Afraid she's not afraid of anything. Yes, she is. Jolene's voice went still, the way water goes still right before it freezes. She's afraid that if you succeed, if a little girl with a lemonade stand can save her brother, then what's her excuse? What's her reason for never helping anyone? Rosie was quiet. Don't let her inside you, Jolene said. That's what she wants. She wants you to quit, to believe you're small. She kissed Rosie's forehead. But you're not small, baby. You're the biggest person I know. From the hallway, Colton listened, and for the first time in 8 months, he felt something other than guilt. Pride. Rusty's bar. Midnight. Mole spread documents across the table like a surgeon laying out instruments. Real name Jerome Baines. Nobody called him that. He earned the name Mole because he could dig up anything about anyone without making a sound. Information was his weapon, and he wielded it with the precision of a man who understood that knowledge in the right hands was more dangerous than any gun. Jolene Darnell, 35, widow. Husband Wade was Army, sergeant, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Purple Heart Bronze Star. Died 8 months ago protecting their son from a drunk driver. Ironside studied the photo, a tired woman in a diner uniform, smile fading at the edges. The boy survived, but his spine took the hit. Surgery could let him walk again. Costs $45,000. Another photo, 2 kids. Boy in a wheelchair, girl with her arm around him, chin up, eyes fierce. Mother works 3 jobs, hospital cleaning overnight, laundromat mornings, truck stop diner on weekends, drowning in debt. No family, no support, just her and those kids. The ones causing trouble. Trent Garner, 16. Dad owns Garner Automotive. Thinks his kid's untouchable. Mole paused. And Genevieve Whitmore. Whitmore. Boomer leaned forward. As in Howard Whitmore. His wife. She's been posting online trying to shut the stand down. Filed a city complaint yesterday, health code violations. Ironside's jaw tightened. A complaint against a 9-year-old. Gets worse, her son Preston's been hanging with the Garner kid. Word is they're planning something bigger. Silence fell across the table like a shroud. Ironside looked at Rosie's photo again. 9 years old, covered in dirt, standing next to her brother's wheelchair. She looked like Nora. The same stubborn set of the jaw. The same buyer fault in the eyes. The same refusal to accept the world as it was. Shepard. A young man looked up from the end of the table. 28. Lean. Quiet in the way that certain silences are quiet, not empty, but full of something held back. Michael Voss. Everyone called him Shepard. He'd lost his little sister 5 years ago. Madison, 14 years old. Bullied until the world inside her head became smaller than the pain, and she couldn't find the door out. Shepard had been away at college, got the call from his mother, and his world turned to ash. He never talked about it, but the tattoo on his forearm said her name, and the way he moved through the world said everything else. Pecan Street tomorrow, Ironside said. Don't approach. Just watch. Let them know someone's paying attention. Shepard nodded. And if those kids come back, Ironside's eyes went cold. Then they see what happens when you mess with someone under our protection. Day 7, a Harley appeared on Pecan Street. Shepard parked across from Rosie's stand, didn't approach, didn't speak, just sat there on his bike, arms crossed, sunglasses catching the light like 2 small mirrors. Rosie noticed him immediately. Tall, leather, tattoos up both arms and one climbing his neck. She should have been scared. She wasn't. Mama said don't talk to strangers, she called out. Shepard's lip twitched, almost a smile. Smart mama. Are you a bad guy? Depends who you ask. Rosie thought about this, decided it was an honest answer. You want lemonade? Shepard swung off his bike, walked over. Up close, she could see his eyes. Not mean, sad. The same kind of sad that lived in Colton's eyes when he thought no one was watching. How much? 50 cents, but you can pay more. It's for my brother. Shepard pulled out $100 bill. Rosie's mouth dropped. That's too much. It's enough. He dropped it in the jar. Pour me a cup. She poured with shaking hands. Shepard sipped, made a face that he tried and failed to hide. That is sweet. Too much sugar. Way too much sugar. My brother says the same thing. Shepard drank the rest of it anyway. Every drop, like it was medicine. What's your name? Rosie asked. People call me Shepard. Why? The question hung in the air between them. Because I show up when people need someone to watch over them. Because my sister needed a shepherd, and I wasn't there. Because I've spent 5 years trying to earn a name that might have saved her. Because I look after people, he said. Rosie tilted her head. Like an angel. Shepard paused mid-sip. The question hit somewhere deep, somewhere locked, somewhere he hadn't let anyone go in years. Something like that. Down the street, dirt bikes. Getting closer, the sound of engines whining like angry insects. Shepard set down his cup. His posture shifted, relaxed to ready. The kind of shift that doesn't look like much unless you know what to watch for. Trent rounded the corner, saw the stand, grinned, then saw Shepard. The grin died on his face like a flame in rain. Shepard didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there, arms crossed, the patches on his vest, saying everything his mouth didn't. Trent slowed. Who's that? One of his friends whispered. Trent didn't answer. He'd seen those patches before. Everyone in Texas knew what they meant. Shepard removed his sunglasses, locked eyes with Trent. The look wasn't threatening exactly. It was informational. It said, I see you, I know what you did, and I am deciding what happens next. Trent turned his bike. Let's go. What I thought we were going to, I said, let's go. They rode away without looking back. Shepard picked up his cup, finished the too sweet lemonade. They won't bother you today. Rosie stared at him. Will you come back tomorrow? Shepard walked to his bike, swung one leg over, started the engine. He looked at her one last time. Count on it. He rode away, thunder echoing down Pecan Street. Rosie watched until he disappeared around the corner and the sound of his engine faded into the heat. She looked at the $100 bill in her jar. She didn't know who Shepard was. Didn't know about the 70 men who rode with him. Didn't know about Ironside or Nora or the Guardian Angel program or any of the things that were already in motion. But she knew one thing. Something had changed. That night, Colton asked about the motorcycle. A biker came today, Rosie said, sitting on the edge of his bed. Tall, scary looking, but he wasn't scary at all. What did he want? Bought lemonade, gave me $100. Colton stared. $100 from a biker. He said people call him Shepard because he looks after people. Rosie paused. I asked if he was an angel. What did he say? He said something like that. Colton wheeled himself to the window, looked out at the empty street. The pavement was blue in the moonlight, and the houses were dark, and nothing moved, but the air felt different. Changed, like the pressure before rain. Rosie, his voice was quiet. Yeah, maybe we're not as alone as we thought. Whilst on at Rusty's bar late that night, Shepard gave his report. The Garner kid backed off the second he saw me. But he'll be back. His type always comes back. Ironside nodded. And the girl? Shepard went quiet for a moment. The bar's sounds filled the space. Glasses clinking. Low voices. The hum of a jukebox playing something old and tired. She asked if I was an angel. The room went still. What did you tell her? Nothing. Shepard's jaw tightened, but she reminded me of someone. Everyone knew who, no one said her name. Ironside stood, put a heavy hand on Shepard's shoulder, the kind of hand that had killed men and held children and carried caskets and gripped handlebars through 3,000 miles of open road. Tomorrow take 2 more with you. Let the town see we're watching. And when they come for her, Ironside's eyes went cold, cold like metal, cold like the name on his daughter's gravestone. Then we teach this town what happens when you mock a child's dream. Day 8, 3 Harleys on Pecan Street, Shepherd in the middle, 2 brothers flanking him. They bought lemonade, left $300. Didn't say much, but their presence said everything. Neighbors watch from windows. Whispers spread through dusty ridge like cracks in dry earth. Who are they, Iron disciples? Same chapter that pulled those kids out of the Henderson house last year. What do they want with that little girl? Nobody had answers, but nobody messed with Rosie that day. Or the next. Or the next. Day 11. Genevieve Whitmore had enough. She marched into the city planning office and slammed her manicured hand on the counter hard enough to make the clerk's coffee jump. I want that stand shut down. Today. Ma'am, it's just a little girl selling. It's an unlicensed vendor operating in a residential zone. Health code violation. Safety hazard. I want an inspector there this afternoon. Mrs. Whitmore, I really don't think... Do you know who my husband is? The clerk swallowed. Everyone in Dusty Ridge knew who Howard Whitmore was. An hour later, an inspector showed up on Pecan Street. Rosie was alone. Jolene was at work. Colton was on the porch. The inspector's name tag said Jenkins, and his face said he hated every step he was taking. I'm sorry, sweetheart. He looked miserable. Someone filed a complaint. I need to see your vendor permit. Rosie frowned. Whoa, what's a vendor permit? It's a license to sell things. I don't have one of those. The inspector sighed, a long, tired sigh that carried the weight of a man who had taken this job to inspect restaurants and factories, not to shut down children. Then I'm afraid I have to ask you to shut down. But this is for my brother's surgery. I know, and I'm sorry, but rules are rules. He pulled out a clipboard. If you continue operating them without a permit, there's a $500 fine. Rosie's face went white. $500? I don't make the rules, sweetheart. Colton wheeled to the edge of the porch. She's 9 years old. She's trying to help me walk again. The inspector wouldn't meet his eyes. He looked at the ground, at his clipboard, at the chipped pitcher, at anything that wasn't an 11-year-old boy in a wheelchair, asking him to explain why the world worked the way it did. I'm sorry, I really am. He turned to leave. You have until tomorrow. He walked away, each step carrying the particular shame of a man enforcing a law he knows is being used as a weapon. Rosie stared at her table, her jar, her sign, everything she'd built with sugar and hope, and hands too small for the weight they carried. Rosie, Colton's voice was tight. It's okay, we'll figure something out. Rosie didn't answer. She picked up her jar, walked inside, and closed the door, quietly, without slamming, which was worse. That night, Jolene found the violation notice on the kitchen table. She read it 3 times. Then she put her head in her hands and cried the way people cry when they've been fighting so long, they've forgotten what they're fighting for. Mama, Jolene looked up. Rosie stood in the doorway, small, scared. I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't know I needed a permit. I didn't know. Baby, no. Jolene opened her arms. Rosie ran into them. This isn't your fault. But now we owe $500. We don't owe anything. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why does everyone want me to stop? Jolene held her tighter. She didn't have an answer. Some questions don't have answers. They just have arms that hold on. Day 12, Genevieve posted again. Victory. The illegal lemonade stand on Pecan Street has been reported and will be shut down. Let this be a lesson. Rules exist for a reason. We can't have just anyone setting up shop wherever they please. Standards matter. With the 107 likes, 32 comments, most of them congratulating her, but 3 were different. You shut down a little girl trying to save her brother. What's wrong with you? This is disgusting. She's 9. How do you sleep at night? Genevieve deleted them. Day 13. Rosie set up her stand anyway. She didn't have a permit. She knew the fine was coming. She didn't care. Rosie, Colton watched from the porch. You're going to get in trouble. I don't care. Mom said to wait. She said she'd figure something out. She's been figuring things out for 8 months. Rosie straightened her sign, the one she'd rewritten in permanent marker this time, so the rain couldn't take the words away. I'm done waiting. She stood there all morning. Nobody came, not because they didn't want to, but because they were afraid. Word had spread. Genevieve Whitmore had drawn a line, and in a small town where one family controlled half the businesses and sat on every board that mattered, and crossing that line meant something. Rosie stood alone in the heat, watching cars pass, watching people avoid her eyes. By noon, she'd made $0, but she didn't move. At 2 o'clock, the dirt bikes came back. Trent Garner and his friends and someone new. Preston Whitmore, 17 years old, quarterback. Genevieve's son. He moved like he owned the air he breathed, and his eyes had the particular emptiness of someone who has never been told no by anyone who mattered. He was worse than Trent, crueler, smarter, untouchable. They circled the stand. "Heard you got shut down," Preston said. He had his phone out recording. "I'm still here." "Not for long," he grinned at the camera. "This is what happens to beggars in America. They get put in their place." "I'm not a beggar." "You're whatever I say you are." He nodded at Trent. "Do it." Trent grabbed the table, flipped it. The pitcher shattered. Lemonade sprayed across the sidewalk like diluted gold. The sign crumpled under the weight of the falling plywood. Rosie dove for the ye. Preston kicked it from her hands. Coins scattered for the second time, catching sunlight as they flew, each one a small piece of something breaking. "Pick them up," Preston laughed. "Go on, crawl." Rosie didn't move. "I said pick them up." "No." Preston's smile flickered. Nobody said no to Preston Whitmore. The word didn't exist in his vocabulary because nobody had ever put it there. "What did you say?" "I said no." He stepped closer, towered over her, 6 feet of entitlement and cruelty, looking down at 3.5 feet of something he didn't understand and couldn't break. "You think you can say no to me? Do you know who my mother is?" "I don't care who your mother is." Preston grabbed her arm, squeezed. His fingers were white. "Let go of me. Make me." From the porch, Colton screamed, "Leave her alone." He tried to wheel down the ramp. The chair tilted on the uneven boards. He fell, hit the ground hard, couldn't get up. "Colton!" Rosie tried to run to him. Preston held her back. "Look at that." He pointed his phone at Colton lying in the dirt. The cripple fell down. Can't even save his own sister. His friends laughed. The sound was thin and sharp, and it cut through the heat like something with edges. Colton lay in the dirt, helpless, humiliated, his cheek pressed against the ground his father used to mow every Saturday morning. Rosie's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't beg, didn't break. She looked Preston dead in the eyes with something that wasn't anger and wasn't fear, but something older than both. "You're going to regret this." Preston laughed. "Regret what? Who's going to make me? Your crippled brother, your broke mem, your little tone of pennies." He leaned down until his face was inches from hers. "There's no one." He shoved her to the ground. "Learn your place, trash." He turned to leave, and then he heard it. They all heard it. Engines, not one, not two, dozens. The ground shook, the air changed, the light itself seemed to vibrate. Rosie looked up from the dirt. Down the street, a wall of chrome, 70 motorcycles, 70 men, iron disciples. The pack rode slow, deliberate, the roar building like a wave that wouldn't crest, just kept rising and rising until the whole street shook with it. Preston's friends froze. Their faces went from smug to scared in the time it took to draw a breath. "What the hell?" The bikes stopped, one by one. The riders dismounted. They were big men, most of them, bearded, scarred, wearing leather and patches, and the particular expression of people who have seen the worst of the world and decided to become the thing that the worst is afraid of. At the front, a man built like a mountain range, gray beard, cold eyes, Ironside. He walked toward the stand, slow, heavy, each step deliberate, each step saying something that words couldn't carry. Preston tried to look tough. The effort was visible and failing. "Who the hell are you?" Ironside didn't answer him, didn't look at him, walked past him like he was a shadow. He stopped in front of Rosie, crouched down. His scarred face was close to hers, and his eyes up close weren't cold at all. They were the eyes of a man who had lost something so important that everything else had rearranged itself around the absence. "You selling lemonade, little warrior?" Rosie's lip trembled. "I was. They broke everything." Ironside looked at the shattered pitcher, the scattered coins, the crumpled sign. Then he looked at Preston. The look lasted 3 seconds. It felt like 3 hours. You do this, Preston's voice cracked. She was breaking the law. No permit. I didn't ask about permits. Ironside stood, all 6 feet 4 inches of him. I asked if you did this. Preston's friends were already backing away, distances opening between them like they'd never been friends at all. It was a joke. A joke. Ironside's voice was quiet, the dangerous kind of quiet. You knocked down a 9-year-old girl, made her brother fall from his wheelchair. And you call it a joke. Look, old man, Ironside stepped closer. Close enough that Preston could see every scar, every line, every year of violence and grief written on his face. I've fought in 3 wars, survived 4 explosions that should have killed me, buried my daughter when she was 7 years old. His eyes were glacial. And you think I'm scared of a teenager with a rich mama? Preston's face went white. The color drained from it like water from a cracked glass. Ironside turned to his men. Pick up every coin, every single one. 70 bikers moved. In 60 seconds, every coin was back in the jar. One of them, Shepard, helped Colton back into his wheelchair, brushed the dirt off his clothes with hands that were gentle despite their size. You okay, kid? Colton nodded, speechless. Ironside walked back to Rosie. Got a new pitcher in the house. I think so. Get it. Rosie ran inside, came back with a fresh pitcher and a bag of sugar and 3 lemons that were the last ones in the kitchen. Ironside looked at his men. Line up, we're buying lemonade. 70 men formed a line that stretched down the block and around the corner, and the money started falling. 20s, 50s, hundreds, bills that Rosie had never held before. The jar overflowed in minutes. They brought out bowls, cups, a bucket from under the kitchen sink. Still the money came. Preston and his friends stood frozen, watching, understanding finally that they had made a mistake so large it didn't have edges. Ironside walked over to them. His voice was low, just for them. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize. Right now, on camera. My mother will... Your mother isn't here. Ironside leaned in. But 70 of us are, and we don't forget faces. We don't forget names. We don't forget boys who hurt little girls. Preston's phone hands shook. Apologize, now. Preston turned to Rosie. His face was ash. His voice barely existed. I'm sorry. Louder. I'm sorry. Now get out. They ran. The dirt bikes screamed to life, and they were gone, leaving behind tire marks and silence, and the particular absence that cowardice leaves when it evacuates. Ironside watched them go, then turned back to Rosie. She stood there surrounded by leather and chrome tears streaming down her face, looking up at a man who looked like the most dangerous person she'd ever seen, and somehow also the safest. Why? She whispered. Why are you helping us? Ironside crouched down again. His scarred hands settled on her shoulder, gentle as a whisper. Because I had a daughter once. She was brave like you. His voice cracked, just barely, a hairline fracture in a wall that had held for 15 years. I couldn't save her, but I can save you. Rosie threw her arms around him. Ironside froze, the way a man freezes when something touches the part of him he thought was dead. Then slowly his arms came up, and the hardest man in Texas held a 9-year-old girl, while 70 bikers stood guard around them like a wall of leather and promise, and something that looked from a distance exactly like love. On the porch, Colton watched through tears. Jolene's car pulled up. She'd gotten a call from a neighbor. She stumbled out, saw the motorcycles, saw her children, saw the money overflowing from every container in the house. What is happening? Shepard walked over. Ma'am, he handed her an envelope. From the club, 15,000, more coming. Jolene's legs gave out. She grabbed the porch rail. I don't understand. Your daughter's been fighting alone. Shepard's eyes were soft. She's not alone anymore. Jolene looked at Rosie, still holding on to Ironside. Looked at Colton, surrounded by bikers who were talking to him like he mattered. Looked at the mountains of money and bowls and buckets and a jar that had started with $3.75. And then for the first time in 8 months, Jolene Darnell let herself hope. The feeling was so unfamiliar it hurt. like blood returning to a limb that had been numb so long she'd forgotten it was part of her body. That night, Pecan Street was quiet. The bikers were gone, but their presence lingered like the echo of thunder. You couldn't see it, but you could feel it. Something in the air, something in the way the street looked at itself. Rosie sat on her bed, the jar beside her pillow. She counted 3 times. $18,437 in one day. Colton knocked on her door. Can't sleep either. Rosie shook her head. He wheeled himself in, stopped beside her bed. Rosie. Yeah. Thank you. Rosie frowned. For what? For not giving up. His voice was thick. For making me promise not to leave. For fighting when I couldn't. Rosie reached out and took his hand. That's what family does. Colton squeezed her fingers. Yeah. He smiled. A real smile. The first one in 8 months. That's what family does. Somewhere in the night, Ironside stood at his daughter's grave. Nora Grace Graves. The stone was simple. No angels, no elaborate carvings. Just her name, her dates, and 4 words, Daddy's little warrior. He placed a single yellow flower on the stone. Nora's favorite color. Found someone who reminds me of you, he said quietly. She's got your fire, your heart, your stubborn streak. The wind rustled the oak leaves above him. I couldn't save you, baby girl, but maybe I can save her. He kissed his fingers, pressed them to the cold stone. Sleep well, Nora. Daddy's got work to do. He walked back to his bike, started the engine. The sound split the silence and filled it with something that sounded like purpose. The highway stretched before him, empty and black, and the headlight cut a tunnel through the night that seemed to go on forever. On Pecan Street, Rosie slept with the jar beside her pillow. $18,000 in a future that hadn't existed yesterday. In the next room, Colton lay awake. He stared at the ceiling, but for the first time in 8 months, he wasn't counting cracks. He was thinking about the man who had crouched down in front of his sister and called her little warrior. About the 70 men who had lined up to buy terrible lemonade like it was the most important thing they'd ever purchased. About the way Shepard had lifted him back into his chair and brushed off his clothes and said, "You okay, kid?" in a voice that expected him to be okay, that believed he could be. He reached under his pillow, pulled out the letter, read it one last time. Then he tore it in half, and then in quarters, and then into pieces so small they looked like snow falling into the trash can beside his bed. Not because the guilt was gone, not because the pain had stopped, but because his sister had sold lemonade in 100-degree heat for him, because his mother worked 18 hours a day for him, because 70 strangers had ridden into town for him, and he was done wasting the love they'd given. Jolene sat at the kitchen table long after both children had fallen asleep. The envelope from the club lay in front of her, $15,000 she hadn't earned and didn't know how to accept. She'd been independent her whole life. Wade used to tease her about it. You'd rather carry a couch up 3 flights of stairs alone than ask someone to hold the door, he'd say. He was right, she would. But tonight she looked at that envelope and she thought about Wade, about the way he used to say, "It's not weakness to need people, Joe. It's just being human." She'd never believed him. Not really. She'd nodded and smiled and kept carrying everything alone because that's what strong people did. Except Rosie. Rosie had stood on a corner and asked for help, 9 years old and braver than her mother had ever been. Jolene picked up the envelope, held it to her chest, and let herself be helped. And somewhere in the Texas night, 70 engines hummed, not a threat, a promise. The girl who refused to break had found her army. The news spread through Dusty Ridge like wildfire through dry brush. By morning, everyone had heard. 70 bikers showed up on Pecan Street to protect a little girl selling lemonade. Some people called it beautiful. Others called it terrifying. Genevieve Whitmore called it war. She stood in her kitchen at 6 in the morning, phone pressed to her ear, voice vibrating with the kind of rage that bends the air around it. I don't care what it takes, Howard. I want those criminals gone. I want that stand gone. I want that entire family gone. Her husband sighed on the other end. The sigh of a man who has heard this voice before and knows that no amount of logic will reach it. Genevieve, it's a little girl. It's an embarrassment. Our son apologized on camera. Do you understand what that looks like? The Whitmores humiliated by trailer trash and motorcycle thugs. Maybe Preston shouldn't have. Don't you dare. Genevieve's voice went to a frequency that could cut glass. Don't you dare blame our son. He was trying to enforce the law. That stand was illegal. He did nothing wrong. Howard Whitmore was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that contains calculations. What do you want me to do? Use your connections. The mayor owes you. The police chief owes you. Half the city council owes you. Genevieve's manicured nails dug into her palm. Make this go away. She hung up before he could answer. Upstairs in his bedroom with the football trophies and the championship banners, Preston sat on his bed staring at nothing. His hands hadn't stopped shaking since yesterday. He could still see Ironside's eyes. The way 70 men had moved in unison like one enormous organism. The way his friends had scattered like roaches when the lights came on. The way a 9-year-old girl had looked at him without flinching and said, "You're going to regret this." He already did, but he would never admit it. Not to anyone, especially not to his mother. Jolene woke to 17 missed calls. She grabbed her phone with hands that already knew something was wrong because hands learn that instinct when the world has been unkind enough at times. First voicemail. Her boss at the hospital. Jolene, I don't know how to say this. Someone complained, said you were using work hours for personal business, that you were unreliable. I tried to fight it, but I'm sorry, we have to let you go. Jolene's blood went cold, the cold that starts behind the eyes and drips down the spine. Second voicemail, the laundromat. We're going to have to make a change, Jolene. Please don't come in today. Third voicemail, the truck stop diner. Honey, I'm so sorry. Someone's been calling all morning threatening to report us for health violations if we keep you on. My hands are tied. I'm so sorry. 3 jobs. Gone. In one night, Jolene sat on the edge of her bed, phone clutched in her trembling hands, and the room spun around her like the inside of a dryer. She knew who did this. Everyone in Dusty Ridge knew who did this. The fingerprints of the Whitmore family were on everything in this town, and when those fingers decided to squeeze, things broke. But knowing and proving were different countries. And the Whitmores had been destroying people from behind their polished gates long before Jolene Darnell moved to town. Rosie found her mother crying in the kitchen. The morning light was thin and gold, and it fell across Jolene's face in a way that made the tears look like something precious. Mama. Jolene wiped her face. Too fast, not fast enough. Morning, baby. Did you sleep okay? Mama, what's wrong? Nothing. Nothing's wrong. You're crying. Jolene looked at her daughter, 9 years old and already carrying more weight than any child should know existed. She couldn't lie to her. She'd promised herself long ago after Wade died that she would never lie to her children. The world would lie to them enough. I lost my job, sweetheart. Rosie's face went pale. All of them. All of them. But why? Jolene pulled Rosie onto her lap and held her close. Because some people don't like it when others fight back. And yesterday we fought back. The bikers fought back. So now the Whitmores are trying to hurt us where it matters most. That's not fair. No, baby, it's not. Rosie was quiet for a moment, her small body tense with thought. Mama, we have $18,000 now. From yesterday. Jolene closed her eyes. That money is for Colton's surgery. I know, but maybe... No. Jolene's voice was firm as iron. That money doesn't get touched. Not for rent, not for food, not for anything except getting your brother walking again. We'll figure the rest out. How? Jolene didn't have an answer. The question hung in the kitchen air, and neither of them reached for it. Down the hallway, Colton heard everything. He wheeled himself back to his room, closed the door, and sat in the silence. 3 jobs. Gone. Because of him. Because Rosie was trying to save him. Because he'd been stupid enough to ride his bike across an intersection without looking. He pulled the trash can out from beside his bed, looked at the torn pieces of his letters, scattered at the bottom like confetti from the worst party ever thrown. He didn't reach for them, didn't try to put them back together. But the guilt was still there, not as a letter now, but as something formless. Something that lived in his bones and spoke in a voice that sounded like his own. He wouldn't write another letter. He'd promised Rosie, but the voice didn't need a letter. It just needed him to listen. He closed his eyes, breathed, and decided with everything he had not to listen. At Rusty's bar, Ironside got the news from Mole. All three jobs cut this morning. Mole set down his coffee. Word is Howard Whitmore made some calls. Ironside's jaw tightened. They're going after the mother now. Going after the whole family, trying to squeeze them out of town. Boomer slammed his fist on the table. The glasses jumped. We should pay Whitmore a visit. Let him know what happens when... No, Ironside's voice was calm, controlled. The calm of a man who has learned that the most dangerous actions are the ones you don't take until the moment is right. That's what they want. They want us to make a move they can use against us. Give them a reason to bring in the cops. Call us criminals. Make us the villains. So we just let them destroy that family. I didn't say that. Ironside stood. Mole, find out everything about Howard Whitmore's business. Every deal, every partner, every skeleton in every closet. That could take time. Then start now. Ironside grabbed his jacket. Shepard, you're with me. We're going to Pecan Street. What's the plan? Ironside headed for the door. We're going to let that little girl know she's not alone, and then we're going to show this town what real power looks like. Rosie was sitting on the porch when the motorcycles appeared. Two this time, Shepard and Ironside. She didn't run to greet them, just sat there, knees pulled to her chest, looking smaller than she had the day before. Ironside parked, walked over slow. Hey, little warrior, you okay? Rosie shook her head. What happened? They fired my mom. Her voice was small and thin, like paper held up to the light. All three jobs, because of yesterday. Ironside crouched down. His scarred face carried something that wasn't pity, because pity is what you feel for strangers, and this was something deeper. That's not because of yesterday. That's because of people who think money makes them was. What's the difference, though? The difference is yesterday you won. You stood up to bullies and you won. What they're doing now, that's them being scared. Scared people do ugly things. Rosie looked at him. Are you ever scared? Ironside was quiet for a moment. A bird called from somewhere. A car passed at the end of the street. The world went on being the world. Every day. You don't look scared. That's because I learned something a long time ago. He sat down beside her on the porch steps. His leather creaked. His weight made the wood groan. Fear is not the enemy. Quitting is. You can be scared and still fight. You can be terrified and still win. The only way to really lose is to stop trying. Rosie thought about this. My mom says the money is only for Colton's surgery, but now we can't pay rent or buy food. How much is rent? I don't know, but Mom cries about it a lot. Ironside nodded slowly. What if I told you that you don't have to worry about rent anymore? Rosie frowned. What do you mean? I mean the club's going to take care of it, not from Colton's surgery fund, from us, every month until your mom gets back on her feet. Why would you do that? Because that's what family does. Rosie stared at him. But we're not your family. Ironside's voice went rough, the rough of sandpaper against something smooth. Yeah, kid, you are. Jolene came out to find a biker sitting on her porch with her daughter. Her first instinct was fear. Her second was something she didn't have a name for. Mrs. Darnell, Ironside stood. We need to talk. About what? About how we're going to help you. Jolene's walls went up. The walls she'd built over 8 months of carrying everything alone. The walls that kept the world at arm's length, because arm's length was the distance at which things couldn't hurt you. I don't need charity. This isn't charity. Ironside's voice was patient. This is war. And in war, soldiers take care of each other's families. I'm not a soldier. No, but your husband was. Jolene froze, every muscle, every breath. Wade Darnell, sergeant, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. Ironside's eyes were steady as stone. He was one of us. Different uniform, same brotherhood. So his family is our family. That's not charity, ma'am. That's honor. Jolene's eyes filled with tears. How did you know about Wade? We know about everyone we protect. Ironside pulled out an envelope. This is for rent. 3 months' worth. There's more where that came from. I can't. Yes, you can. His voice was firm but kind. the combination that only exists in people who have earned the right to be both. Your daughter's been fighting alone for too long, so have you. Let us help. Jolene looked at the envelope, then at Rosie, then at the man who looked like he could level a building with his hands, but spoke about her dead husband like he was a brother lost at sea. She took the envelope. Thank you. Now we need to talk about the Whitmores. They sat in the kitchen. Jolene, Ironside, Shepard, Rosie, Colton. Around the table where they'd eaten dinner for years, where Wade used to help with homework and make terrible jokes and fill the room with a presence so large it still echoed. They're going to keep coming, Ironside said. People like the Whitmores don't stop. They don't know how. You embarrass them and they'll burn down the whole town before they let that stand. What can we do? Jolene asked. You don't have to do anything. We'll handle it. How? Ironside glanced at Shepard, then back at Jolene. We're going to expose them. Expose them how? Howard Whitmore didn't get rich by being honest. He got rich by stepping on people, taking shortcuts, bending rules, breaking laws. Ironside leaned forward. Mole is digging right now. When he finds something, and he will, we go public. That could take weeks, months. It might, but in the meantime, we keep you safe. Keep the money coming for Colton. Keep the pressure up. Jolene was quiet for a long moment. Why are you doing this? Really, Ironside's jaw tightened. Because 15 years ago, I watched my daughter die. 7 years old. Leukemia. His voice went rough. I couldn't save her. No amount of money, no amount of prayers, no amount of anything. So I made a promise. I would protect every child I could. He looked at Rosie, then at Colton. Your kids aren't mine, I know that, but when I see them fight, when I see them refuse to break, I see her. I see Nora, and I'm not going to let the world crush them the way it crushed me. Jolene reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you. Ironside looked down at their hands. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long fight ahead. 3 days later, with the bikers watching Rosie set up her stand again. Not because she needed the money, Ironside had made sure of that, but because she refused to hide. She refused to let the Whitmores decide when she was allowed to stand on her own sidewalk. Shepard was there, 2 other riders with him. They bought lemonade, talked to neighbors, made their presence known. And slowly, like animals coming out after a storm, people started coming back. Mrs. Caldwell was first. I knew they couldn't keep you down, sweetheart. Then the truck driver from before saw what happened on the news, came back with his daughter. Then strangers, people from 2 towns over, 3 towns, 4. They'd seen the video, not the one Preston posted that had been taken down. The other one, the one someone had filmed of 70 bikers lining up to buy lemonade from a 9-year-old girl. It had 2 million views. Is this the famous lemonade stand? A woman asked, tears in her eyes. I drove 3 hours to see it. Yes, ma'am, 50 cents. The woman handed her $100. Keep it, honey, for your brother. By the end of the day, Rosie had made $4,000. And the body wasn't just holding money anymore. It was holding something larger. Something with a pulse. 2 days later, a news van pulled up. Local station. A reporter named Jennifer Walsh. Young, sharp, with the kind of hunger that good journalists have before the industry beats it out of them. I want to do a story, she told Jolene, about Rosie, about what the town's been doing to her, about the bikers who showed up. Jolene hesitated. I don't want my kids turned into a circus. It won't be like that, I promise. Jennifer's eyes were earnest. People need to see this. They need to know that a little girl stood up to bullies and won. That's important. Jolene looked at Rosie. What do you think, baby? Rosie considered. Will it help other kids like Colton? Jennifer nodded. It might. Stories like yours can change things. Rosie looked at her mother. Then let's do it. The interview aired that night. Jennifer didn't sugarcoat a single thing. She talked about the bullying, the destruction of the stand, Genevieve Whitmore's complaint, the 3 jobs Jolene lost overnight. And she talked about the bikers. They showed up when no one else would, Rosie said on camera. Everyone was scared, but they weren't scared. Were you afraid of them? Jennifer asked. Rosie shook her head. They're not scary. They're angels. Just different-looking ones. The clip went viral. 3 million views by midnight. 5 million by morning. Phone calls flooded the station. Donations flooded in. The story got picked up by national news, and Rosie's face appeared on screens in cities she'd never heard of. And Genevieve Whitmore watched it all from her living room with murder in her eyes. This is a disaster, Genevieve paced. Howard sat on the couch, not meeting her gaze. Everyone's talking about that little brat like she's some kind of hero. Meanwhile, our son looks like a monster. We look like monsters. Maybe because... Don't. Genevieve's voice could have frozen the sun. Don't you dare say what I think you're going to say. Howard stood up. Something had shifted in him. The shift was small, but the kind of small that changes the direction of rivers. I went there, Genevieve, the other night. I parked outside their house, watched them through the window. You did what? They were laughing. After everything we did to them, they were sitting around their kitchen table laughing. Howard's voice broke on the word, like it was something he'd forgotten how to carry. When was the last time we did that? When was the last time our family laughed together? Genevieve's face twisted. What's your point? My point is maybe they're not the problem. Maybe we are. Silence. Heavy, dangerous, the kind that comes before things shatter. Get out, Genevieve said. What? Get out of this house, now. Howard stared at her. The woman he'd married 23 years ago. The woman he'd built an empire with. The woman whose eyes now held something he didn't recognize and didn't want to name. He grabbed his keys. I'm going to fix this. The right way. He left. Genevieve stood alone in her perfect living room with her perfect furniture and her perfect rage, and she was more alone than she had ever been. She picked up her phone, made one more call. The next morning, 2 police cruisers pulled up to Pecan Street. Officer Davis stepped out. 12 years on the force. He didn't like the Whitmores, didn't like this assignment. But the chief had been clear, and the chief answered to people who answered to Howard Whitmore, so here he was. Walking up a path he didn't want to walk, carrying a clipboard he didn't want to carry, delivering a message he didn't believe. His partner, a younger officer named Reeves, stayed by the car. This doesn't feel right, sir. Because it isn't right, but we have orders. Since when do we take orders from civilians? Davis looked at him. Since civilians started paying for the chief's lake house. Mrs. Darnell. He approached Jolene on the porch. His face said everything his words tried to hide. I'm sorry, ma'am. We've received a complaint. What kind of complaint? Child endangerment. There's been an allegation that you've been using your children to solicit money fraudulently. Jolene's face went white, not pale, white. The color that skin becomes when all the blood rushes to the heart because the heart needs everything it can get to keep beating. That's insane. I know, ma'am, but we're required to investigate. Social services will be here within the hour. Social services. It's procedure. I'm sorry, I really am. Jolene grabbed the porch rail. They weren't trying to shut down the stand anymore. They weren't trying to take her jobs. They were trying to take her children. Rosie saw the police cars from her bedroom window. She ran downstairs. Mama, what's happening? Go back upstairs, baby. But, Rosie, please. Jolene's voice cracked. Just go upstairs with Colton. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Rosie's eyes went wide with the particular terror of a child who understands that the adults don't have this under control. Are they going to arrest us? No, baby. No one's getting arrested. Jolene pulled her close, kissed her hair. But some people are trying to hurt us again. I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Rosie nodded. Good girl, now go. Rosie ran upstairs, grabbed Colton, told him everything. They can't take us, Colton said. They can't. What do we do? Colton thought for a moment. Then he grabbed his phone. Shepard gave me his number. Said to call if we ever needed help. Call him. Colton dialed. Shepard answered on the second ring. Colton, what's wrong? Police are here. They're talking about social services. Someone said Mom's endangering us. Silence. Then sharp and immediate. Stay inside. Don't talk to anyone. We're on our way. The line went dead. Colton looked at Rosie. They're coming. 20 minutes later, the thunder started. Jolene was still on the porch arguing with the social services worker, a woman with a clipboard and an expression that said she'd seen worse, but not by much when she heard it. A low rumble. Building. Growing. Officer Davis heard it too. His hand moved to his radio. What the hell is that? The answer came over the hill. Motorcycles, not 70 this time, more. Jolene counted them as they rolled down Pecan Street like a river of chrome. 50, 70, 100, 150. Bikers from every chapter in Texas, maybe beyond. Word had spread through the brotherhood the way it always does, fast and absolute. The little girl with the lemonade stand was in trouble, and the brotherhood had answered. They filled the street, filled the yards, surrounded the house in a wall of leather and chrome, and the particular silence of men who have come prepared for anything. Ironside dismounted and walked to the porch. Mrs. Darnell, you okay? Jolene couldn't speak. She just shook her head. Ironside turned to Officer Davis. What's going on here? Davis swallowed. Sir, this is a police matter. I'm going to have to ask you to... I asked what's going on. There's been a complaint, allegations of child endangerment. From who? Davis hesitated. I'm not at liberty. Genevieve Whitmore. Ironside's voice was flat. It was Genevieve Whitmore. I can't confirm. You don't have to. Ironside stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to get back in your car. You're going to drive back to the station. And you're going to tell whoever sent you that this family is under our protection. Sir, I have a legal obligation. Your legal obligation is to protect and serve. So serve this. Ironside's eyes held no heat, only certainty. There is no child endangerment here. There's a mother working herself to death for her kids. There's a little girl fighting to save her brother. And there's a boy who needs surgery, not social services. Davis looked at the 150 bikers surrounding him, looked at Jolene, tears streaming down her face, looked up at the second-floor window, where two children watched with terrified eyes. He made a decision, the kind of decision that costs something but saves something bigger. Let's go, he said to his partner. This was a mistake. The complaint is garbage, and I'm not doing the Whitmore's dirty work anymore. They got in their cars and drove away. Jolene's legs gave out. Ironside caught her before she hit the ground. Easy, easy, it's over. They tried to take my children. Her voice was ragged, torn. They tried, they didn't, they won't. How can you be sure? Ironside helped her to her feet. Because from now on, there's always going to be someone here, day and night, watching, protecting. He turned to the assembled riders. These men came from all over Texas, some from Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico. They don't know your kids, but they know what's right, and they're not leaving until this is over. One by one, riders shared their stories. An older man, gray-haired, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, stepped forward. Because 40 years ago, I was Colton. His voice was rough as gravel. Got hit by a drunk driver when I was 12. Spent 2 years in a wheelchair. My dad worked at 3 jobs to pay for my surgery. Nobody helped us. Nobody. He swallowed. I walk today because my dad killed himself working. Heart attack at 45. I always swore if I ever had a chance to help a family like mine, I would. Another rider stepped up. A woman. Full-sleeve tattoos, hard eyes, but her voice was soft as cotton. I was Rosie once, set up a stand to raise money for my mom's cancer treatment. Got shut down by the city. My mom died 3 months later. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I couldn't save her, but I can help save Colton. Jolene listened until she couldn't anymore. Then she went upstairs, unlocked the door, and held her children until the sun went down. And at Rusty's bar past midnight, Mole called Ironside with news. Found something big. Talk. Howard Whitmore's company has been bribing city officials for years. Rigged bids, fake permits, zoning violations. It's all documented. I've got emails, bank records, everything. Ironside's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. How bad? Bad enough for federal charges, bad enough to take down half the city council. Can we prove it? We can prove all of it. Then we go public tomorrow. You sure this is going to blow up the whole town? Ironside looked out at the parking lot, chrome gleaming under the buzzing lights. Some things need to burn before they can grow. But before the burn, the darkness made one last move. Genevieve Whitmore, 3 in the morning, sat alone in her house and made a phone call she hadn't made in 15 years. to a man named Marcus Webb, a man who solved problems that couldn't be solved by lawyers or judges or money alone. I need your help. Must be serious. You swore you'd never call again. There's a family on Pecan Street. The Darnells. I need them gone. Silence on the other end. Gone how? Genevieve's voice was ice. I don't care how. Just make them disappear from this town. Tonight. There are bikers protecting them. I know, that's going to cost extra. Money isn't an issue. Give me 2 hours. Genevieve hung up, walked to the window, stared into the darkness. By morning, the Darnells would be a memory, and Genevieve Whitmore would have her town back. Ironside's phone buzzed at 3:47. Mole. We've got a problem. Genevieve Whitmore just made a call. Burner phone, but I've got contacts. The number belongs to a guy named Marcus Webb. Ironside's blood went cold, the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature. Webb, you're sure, positive, you know him. He's a fixer, worked for the cartels back in the day, does dirty work for rich people who want to keep their hands clean. What kind of dirty work? The kind that ends with people in shallow graves. The kind where the client never gets their hands dirty and the bodies never get found. Silence. The kind that has weight and shape and consequence. Boss, if Webb's involved, this isn't about shutting down a lemonade stand anymore. This is about making a family disappear. Get everyone up, every rider. I want them on Pecan Street in 20 minutes. What about the family? I'm going to warn them myself. Jolene woke to pounding on her door. She grabbed the baseball bat she kept under her bed and crept downstairs. 4:15 in the morning. Who's there? It's Ironside. Open up, now. She unlocked the door. Ironside pushed inside. Shepard right behind him. What's happening? Genevieve Whitmore hired someone. A professional. He's coming tonight. Jolene's face went white. Coming to do what? Nothing good. You need to wake the kids. Pack a bag. You're leaving. Leaving where? Somewhere safe. We've got a place outside of town. No one knows about it. I'm not running. Jolene's voice hardened. I've been running my whole life. From bills, from problems, from everything. I'm done running. Jolene, this isn't about pride. This is about keeping your children alive. The word alive hit her like a physical thing. She looked toward the stairs, toward the rooms where her children slept. Fine, but I'm not going far, and the second it's safe, I'm coming back. Deal. Rosie woke up confused. Her mother was shoving clothes into a bag, moving fast, not explaining. Mama, what's going on? We're going somewhere safe, baby, just for a little while. Why did something happen? Jolene knelt down. Remember what I said about scared people doing ugly things? Well, they're about to do something very ugly. And I need to make sure you and Colton are safe. Are the bikers coming with us? Some of them. The rest are going to stay and handle things. By 5 in the morning, the family was in a van heading out of town. Shepard drove. Jolene sat in the back with the kids. Colton hadn't said a word since they woke him. Rosie had fallen asleep against his shoulder within minutes. How far? Jolene asked. About 30 miles. Old farmhouse. Safe house. How long do we have to stay? Until it's over. Back on Pecan Street, Ironside had 50 riders positioned in the darkness around the block. Quiet, invisible, waiting. Webb usually works with a crew of 4 or 5, Ironside told Boomer. Hits fast and quiet, no witnesses. What's our play? We wait, let them come to us. The house is empty. They'll figure that out quick. When they try to leave, we block them in. Marcus Webb arrived at 5:30. He was 52, lean gray-haired, with the kind of face that could walk through a crowd and leave no impression. That was his gift, forgettable, professional, deadly. He'd brought 4 men, all armed, all experienced. They moved toward the house in the darkness. The front door was unlocked. Webb pushed it open, stepped inside. Empty. They're gone. Obviously, Webb walked through the kitchen, saw the signs of a rushed departure. Half-packed bag left behind, a cereal box still on the counter. Someone warned them, let's go. We'll come back another. The roar of engines cut him off. Webb ran to the window, motorcycles closing in from every direction. Headlights blazing. A wall of chrome. We're surrounded. Webb's jaw tightened. He'd been in bad situations before. prisons in Mexico, standoffs with federal agents. But this was different. These weren't cops. These were men who operated by a different set of rules. Back door, move. They ran. The back door led to a small yard, a fence. Beyond the fence, an alley. Webb was halfway across the yard when a figure stepped out of the shadows. Ironside. Going somewhere. Webb stopped. His men fanned out behind him. We don't have a problem. We were just leaving. You came to hurt a family, women and children. That's a problem. I was hired to deliver a message. That's all. What kind of message requires 4 armed men at 5 in the morning? Webb didn't answer. Ironside stepped closer. Here's the thing, Webb. I know who you are. I know what you do. And normally I'd say that's none of my business. People like you clean up messes for people like Whitmore. That's the world, do so? So let us walk. I can't do that because those people you came to threaten that family, that's my family. And nobody threatens my family. Webb's hand drifted toward his weapon. 50 riders emerged from the darkness, surrounding them completely. I wouldn't, Ironside said. Webb counted the odds, made a calculation, made the right one. What do you want? I want you to deliver a message, a real one, to Genevieve Whitmore. What message? Ironside stepped so close Webb could see every scar. Tell her it's over. Tell her if she sends anyone else, they won't leave this town. Tell her if she touches those children again, I will personally burn her world to the ground. He paused, let the weight settle. And tell her I know about San Antonio. Webb's face changed, just a flicker, a crack in the mask. 1987, her first husband, the one who disappeared. Ironside's voice was ice. She thinks that secret is buried, but secrets have a way of coming back up. Webb swallowed. She won't like this. I don't care what she likes. I care about what she does. Now get out of my town. Webb and his men left without another word. Their car disappeared down the highway and the darkness reclaimed the road behind them. Genevieve got the call at 6:15. It's done. Good. No, Webb's voice was flat. It's not done, and it's never going to be done. What are you talking about? 50 bikers surrounding my crew, a man who knows things about you that should have stayed buried. Genevieve's blood turned to ice water. What things? San Antonio, 1987. Silence. The kind that means the world has shifted beneath your feet. That's impossible. No one knows about that. Someone does, and he'll use it if you don't stop. What do? You stop. You leave that family alone. You forget they exist. I can't just... Yes, you can and you will, because the alternative is prison, or worse. Webb paused. I'm returning your money. This contract is done. Don't call me again. The line went dead. Genevieve sat in the darkness of her perfect house and the walls closed in around her. San Antonio. She hadn't thought about that night in decades. The night her first husband, Thomas, had threatened to expose her affair. The night she'd made a phone call. The night Thomas had vanished. She'd been 24 years old. Careful. Ruthless. She'd covered every track, paid every price, rebuilt her life on the buried bones of the old one. And somehow a biker in a Texas backwater had found it. Howard Whitmore returned home at 7 in the morning. He found his wife sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. Genevieve. No response. He turned on the light, saw her face, pale, hollow, aged 20 years in one night. What happened? It's over. Everything. It's all over. Her voice was barely there. San Antonio. He knows about San Antonio. Howard frowned. What about San Antonio? Genevieve looked at him, and in that moment Howard saw something he had never seen in 23 years of marriage. Fear. Not the kind that comes from losing money or status. The kind that comes from losing the story you've told yourself about who you are. Thomas, you remember my first husband? You said he left. Went to Mexico. He didn't leave. Genevieve's voice cracked. I made him disappear. The room tilted. You what? He was going to ruin me, expose everything. So I called someone, and Thomas went away. Howard backed away from his wife. 1 step. 2. I'm going to the police, he said. What? The FBI is already investigating our company. If I cooperate, if I tell them everything, maybe I can salvage something. Maybe Preston won't have to spend his life in prison because of us. You would betray me. You betrayed yourself, Genevieve. Howard's voice was quiet. The quiet of a man who is finally being honest. You betrayed all of us. The moment you decided that a 9-year-old girl was your enemy, you lost. I was just too blind to see it. He walked to the door. Where are you going? To do the right thing. For the first time in my life. He left. Genevieve screamed. The sound echoed through the perfect house and the perfect hallways, in the perfect empty rooms, and nobody came running because there was nobody left. At 6 that evening, the story aired. Jennifer Walsh delivered it with surgical precision. Every bribe, every backdoor deal, every dollar that had been funneled from Howard Whitmore's construction company into the pockets of city officials for the past 15 years. She named names, she showed documents. She let the numbers speak their own language of corruption. By 7, the FBI had announced a formal investigation. By 8, 3 city council members had resigned. 2 more were expected to follow by morning. By 9, the Whitmore family empire was crumbling piece by piece like a building whose foundation had always been sand. 30 years of deals and favors and handshakes in dark rooms, all of it unraveling on live television. Genevieve Whitmore was arrested at her home at 9:45. The charges read like a novel of corruption, fraud, bribery, conspiracy, intimidation, filing false reports, and pending further investigation, 1 count of accessory to murder after the fact. San Antonio, 1987. She walked out of her front door in handcuffs, past the news cameras, past the neighbors who watched from their yards, past the life she had built on lies and threats, and the convenient disappearance of anyone who got in her way. And at 10 o'clock, Genevieve Whitmore stood alone in a holding cell, watching her perfect life burn. Her phone had been taken. Her lawyers were scrambling. And everywhere, on every screen, in every house in Dusty Ridge, a 9-year-old girl smiled and waved at cameras surrounded by bikers who looked at her like she was their own daughter. And Genevieve Whitmore felt something she had never felt before. Fear. Real fear. Not of bikers, not of investigations, but of a little girl who refused to break. Because if a child with nothing could stand up to a woman with everything and win, then what did that say about the woman? What did it say about the everything Jolene called Ironside at 8 the next morning? Is it really over? Webb is gone, Genevieve is backed into a corner, and Howard Whitmore just walked into the FBI field office with a box full of documents. Jolene's legs went weak. He turned himself in. He turned everyone in. His wife, his business partners, half the city council. It's going to be the biggest corruption case this state has seen in decades. And Genevieve, she's not going to be a problem anymore. Ever. Jolene closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her face. Can we come home? You can come home. The drive back to Pecan Street was quiet. Rosie was awake now, watching the Texas landscape roll past the window. Flat land and blue sky and the occasional mesquite tree standing alone like a sentinel. Is it really over? She asked. It's really over. Jolene reached back and squeezed her hand. We're safe. What happened to the mean lady? She's going to face consequences for everything she did. Rosie was quiet for a moment. Good. Colton laughed. It surprised everyone, including himself. What's so funny? Rosie demanded. Nothing, it's just... He shook his head. I never thought I'd hear you say something like that. Like what? Something hard, something grown up. Rosie shrugged. I grew up a lot this week. Jolene's throat tightened. She had. They all had. Grown into shapes they hadn't expected, forged by heat and pressure into something new. Something stronger. Something that would hold. Pecan Street looked different in the morning light. The motorcycles were still there, but the tension was gone. Bikers lounged on porches drinking coffee, talking to neighbors like they'd always lived there. When the van pulled up, Ironside was waiting. Rosie jumped out first, ran straight to him. Is it true? Is it really over? Ironside crouched down. It's really over, little warrior. We won. You won. Rosie threw her arms around him. Ironside held on tight. Over her shoulder, he saw Jolene helping Colton out of the van. The boy was smiling. Mr. Ironside. Yeah, my dad would have liked you. Ironside's throat tightened. I would have liked him too. Rosie smiled and walked inside to put her bag down. She was home. The house smelled the same, like lemon and wood and something warm that she could never identify, but that always meant safety. She went to her room. The jar was still on her nightstand exactly where she'd left it. She picked it up, held it to her chest, and sat on her bed. Colton wheeled himself to her doorway. Hey, hey, we're a couple of days. Yeah. Rosie looked at him. Colton, yeah, I love you. I love you too, Rosie. And when you can walk again, the first thing you are going to do is help me make lemonade. Real lemonade, not that sugar water. Colton laughed. It was a sound that filled the hallway and spilled down the stairs and reached the kitchen, where Jolene was standing alone, eyes closed, listening to her children laugh. She put her hand over her mouth and let the sound wash over her like rain after drought. Deal, Colton said, but I'm in charge of the recipe. Fine, but I'm in charge of the money. Obviously. They smiled at each other across the doorway. Two kids who had been through something that most adults never face and come out the other side holding hands. The surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday, 2 weeks after the arrest. 2 weeks of quiet, of breathing, of learning what it felt like to wake up in a house where nobody was trying to destroy you. Jolene called the hospital on a Monday afternoon. I'd like to schedule the surgery for my son, Colton Darnell. Of course, Mrs. Darnell. Let me check our availability. A pause, the sound of typing. We have an opening in 2 weeks. Does that work? Jolene's voice broke. That works. That works perfectly. She hung up, stood in the kitchen, let herself cry. 2 weeks. After 8 months of struggling, fighting, praying, selling lemonade in 100-degree heat, after bikers and bullies and arrests and hired killers, 2 weeks until her son might walk again. It didn't feel real. Real things don't arrive this way all at once after so much darkness. Real things trickle in, measured and predictable. This felt like a dam breaking, like the whole sky falling at once. Jolene testified at the trial 3 days before the surgery. The courtroom was packed. Media, spectators, neighbors who had watched the whole thing unfold from behind their curtains. Genevieve sat at the defendant's table. She looked smaller than Jolene remembered. Pale, thin, like someone had let the air out of her. The power that had once surrounded her like armor was gone, and without it, she was just a woman in an expensive suit that no longer fit right. Their eyes met across the room. Genevieve looked away first. Jolene took the witness stand and told her story. Every detail, every humiliation, every threat. They tried to take my children, she said, because we were poor, because we fought back, because a 9-year-old girl dared to sell lemonade on a public street. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that means everyone is listening with something deeper than their ears. I've worked my whole life, 3 jobs, 18-hour days, and it still wasn't enough. Not because I'm lazy, not because I'm stupid, but because the system is broken. Because people like Genevieve Whitmore can destroy families with a phone call and no one stops them. Jolene looked directly at Genevieve. My daughter is 9 years old. She stood in 100-degree heat selling lemonade for 50 cents because she believed she could save her brother. And you, with your Mercedes and your mansion and your connections, you tried to crush her. Genevieve's eyes dropped. But my little girl didn't break, and neither did I, and neither did Colton. Jolene's voice rose. You threw everything you had at us, and we're still standing. We're still here, and we're going to keep standing long after you're gone. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. It took a full minute to restore order. When Jolene stepped down, Ironside was waiting in the gallery. He nodded once. She nodded back. No words needed. Genevieve Whitmore was convicted on 12 counts. Fraud, bribery, conspiracy, intimidation, filing false reports, and 1 count of accessory to murder after the fact for her first husband's disappearance in 1987. Total sentence 45 years. She would die in prison. The night before surgery, Rosie couldn't sleep. She crept into Colton's room, found him awake too, staring at the ceiling the way he used to, except now his eyes held something different. Not the empty counting of cracks, something closer to anticipation. Something that might have been hope if hope weren't such a fragile word. Scared, she asked. Terrified. Me too. She climbed onto his bed, curled up beside him the way they used to when they were little, and the thunderstorms would rattle the windows and their father would come in and say, "Storm's just God rearranging the furniture." Rosie, yeah, what if I can't walk? What if all this was for nothing? It wasn't for nothing. Her voice was firm. Even if the surgery doesn't work, and it will work, this wasn't for nothing. We showed everyone that we don't give up, that our family fights. That's not nothing. But I want to walk again. I want to run and play, and you will. Rosie grabbed his hand. I know you will, because I prayed for it every single night, and God owes us one. Colton laughed, a wet, broken laugh. God owes us one, at least one, maybe two. I don't think that's how prayer works. I don't care. She squeezed his hand. Tomorrow you're going to be brave, and I'm going to be right there. And when you wake up, you're going to move your toes. I know it. How do you know? Because you're my brother, and my brother doesn't give up. Colton held her hand tighter. I love you, Rosie. I love you too. Now go to sleep. Big day tomorrow. They fell asleep like that. Two kids against the world. Together. Morning came too fast. Jolene dressed Colton in his best clothes. Not for any medical reason. The hospital would put him in a gown anyway. But because it felt right. Because you dress up for important things, and this was the most important thing that had ever happened. Ironside arrived at 6, Shepard and Boomer with him. Ready? Ironside asked. Colton nodded. Ready. When they arrived at the hospital, there was a crowd outside. Not protesters, not media, bikers. 70 of them, maybe more, lined up in formation. Engines idling like a mechanical heartbeat. What? Jolene couldn't finish. They wanted to see him off, Ironside said. Every one of them. Colton stared out the window at the sea of leather and chrome. Men and women who had ridden from across 3 states to stand in a parking lot at dawn for a boy they'd never met. For me, for you, kid. Ironside helped him out of the van, wheeled him toward the entrance. As they passed, every biker raised a fist. Silent, respectful, powerful. Not a cheer, not a shout, just a wall of raised fists that said, "We are here, we believe in you. You are not alone." Colton raised his fist in return, and for one perfect moment, a boy in a wheelchair was a king. The hospital doors closed behind them. Jolene filled out paperwork, signed forms, answered questions. Rosie sat beside Colton holding his hand. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. A nurse appeared. Colton Darnell, we're ready for you. Jolene kissed his forehead. I love you, baby. I love you too, Mom. Rosie hugged him. Don't forget to wiggle your toes. I won't. They wheeled him away. Jolene and Rosie watched until he disappeared through the double doors. Then Jolene collapsed into a chair and cried. The ugly kind. The kind that has been held back for too long. Rosie sat beside her, took her hand. He's going to be okay, Mama. I know, baby. Then why are you crying? Because sometimes happy tears and scared tears feel exactly the same. The surgery took 6 hours. Ironside stayed the whole time. So did Shepard Boomer and a dozen other riders. They filled the waiting room with leather and tattoos and the particular patience of men who have spent long hours waiting for things that mattered. At hour 4, Rosie fell asleep against Ironside's shoulder. He didn't move her, didn't shift, just sat there still as stone, while a 9-year-old girl used him as a pillow and dreamed whatever dreams 9-year-old girls dream when the world is both terrible and miraculous at the same time. At hour 5, Jolene started pacing. At hour 6, the doors opened. The surgeon walked out, mask pulled down, face unreadable. Jolene grabbed Ironside's arm. Mrs. Darnell. Yes, how is he? Is he okay? The surgeon smiled. The surgery was successful. We repaired the damage to his spinal column. He's going to need extensive physical therapy, but what? But your son is going to walk again. Jolene's legs gave out. Ironside caught her for the 3rd time. She was starting to think he'd always be there to catch her. Rosie woke up. What happened? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, baby. Jolene was laughing and crying and shaking all at once. Nothing's wrong at all. Colton is going to walk. Rosie screamed. Not a scared scream, a joy scream. The kind that echoed through hospital hallways and made nurses smile and made hard men in leather wipe their eyes. She threw herself at Ironside. Thank you. Thank you, thank you." Ironside held her tight, and for the first time in 15 years, Flint Graves let himself cry. Not the secret kind, not the kind he did alone at Nora's grave. The real kind. The kind that comes from a place so deep it doesn't have a name. They let Rosie see Colton first. He was groggy, pale, hooked up to machines that beeped in rhythms that sounded like a mechanical heartbeat, but his eyes were open. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey." His voice was thin. "How do you feel?" "Like someone rebuilt me from the inside." "Can you—" Rosie's voice trembled. "Can you feel your legs?" Colton was quiet. The room was quiet. The machines beeped. The world held its breath. Then slowly his toes moved. Just a twitch, barely visible under the thin hospital blanket. But it was there. "I felt that," he whispered. "Rosie, I felt that." Rosie grabbed his hand and sobbed. The kind of sobbing that is also laughing. The kind that means the worst is over and the best is just beginning. Recovery was harder than surgery. That's what the doctor said. That's what the physical therapist said. That's what everyone said. They were right. His physical therapist was a man named Ray Tillman. 38 years old, broad shoulders, steady hands, and a limp so subtle you'd miss it unless you were looking. "My name is Ray," he said on the first day, "and I was in a wheelchair for 3 years." Colton looked at him, really looked. Ray was standing, walking, moving like it was nothing. "What happened?" "Car accident, spinal cord injury. Doctor said I'd never walk again." Ray smiled. "I told them they were wrong. Then I spent 3 years proving it. 3 years. Every single day, even when I wanted to quit, even when I thought I couldn't take another minute." Ray pulled up a chair. "You know what got me through? What? A promise. I promised my little sister I'd walk her down the aisle at her wedding. She was 12 when I made that promise. She was 15 when I kept it." Colton thought of Rosie, her lemonade stand, her fierce determination, her refusal to quit even when the world was pouring lemonade over her head. "I have a sister too," he said quietly. "Then you have a reason. Now let's get to work." Week 1 was brutal. Colton couldn't move his legs, could barely feel them. Every session ended in frustration and tears. "I can't do this," he told Ray. "Yes, you can. You don't understand. I've been in this wheelchair for 8 months. 8 months of watching everyone else live while I just sat there." Ray showed him a video on his phone. "This is me 6 months after my accident." On the screen, a man lay in a hospital bed, pale, frustrated, hopeless. "Look familiar?" Colton swallowed. "That looks like me." "Exactly." Ray swiped to another video. "This is me 1 year later. The same man in a wheelchair, but his legs were moving. Just a little, just enough. And this," another swipe. 3 years later, the man was walking, slowly with a cane, but walking. "Progress isn't always visible," Ray said. "Sometimes it's happening inside where you can't see it. Your nerves are reconnecting. Your muscles are remembering. Trust the process." "How did you not give up?" "I did give up, lots of times, but then I'd remember my sister and I'd start again." Ray put away his phone. "What do you remember when you want to quit?" Colton was quiet for a long time. "My dad, he died saving me. If I give up, his sacrifice means nothing." "Then don't give up." "It's not that simple." "Yes," Ray said. "It is." Week 2, progress. Tiny, almost invisible progress, but progress. Colton's big toe moved, not a twitch, a real deliberate movement. "I did it," he shouted. "Ray, I did it." Ray was across the room in seconds. "Do it again." Colton concentrated, his toe moved. Again and again. "That's step 1, now we work on step 2. "What's step 2? "The rest of your foot." Week 3. Colton stood, just for a second, just with Ray holding him up, just barely. But he stood. Jolene cried. Rosie screamed. Colton laughed until his sides ached. "I stood," he kept saying. "I stood." Then 3 days later, infection. Post-surgical complication. His temperature spiked to 103. The incision site swelled and reddened, and the doctors' faces went from encouraging to grave. "We need to take him back into surgery," the surgeon told Jolene. "The infection is aggressive. If we don't address it now, there's a risk of permanent nerve damage." Jolene felt the floor tilt beneath her. Permanent? You mean he could? There's a chance the progress could be reversed. I have to be honest with you. Jolene stood in the hallway outside Colton's room and the walls closed in. 8 months of fighting, selling lemonade, bikers, arrests, hired killers, a trial, a conviction, a successful surgery. And now, after all of it, after everything, the possibility that it was all for nothing. She called Ironside. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the phone. What happened? His voice was sharp. Infection. They have to operate again. They said. She couldn't finish. I'm on my way. He was there in 20 minutes. Shepard, too. They found Jolene in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself, rocking. Listen to me. Ironside's hands were on her shoulders. That boy in there survived a car accident that killed his father. He survived 8 months in a wheelchair. He survived bullies and a woman who tried to destroy his family. He is not going to be taken down by an infection. You don't know that. I know him, and I know his sister. And I know that the Darnell family does not quit. Rosie arrived an hour later. Jolene had tried to keep it from her, but Rosie had a sixth sense for when things were wrong. She called Shepard from Mrs. Caldwell's house and demanded to be brought to the hospital. She walked into Colton's room. He was feverish, pale, scared. The machines around him beeped faster than before. Hey, she said. Hey. His voice was barely there. I heard. Rosie, if the surgery doesn't, stop. She climbed onto the bed beside him, took his hand, her small fingers wrapped around his the way they had 100 times before. You promised me. Remember, you promised you wouldn't leave. This is different. No, it's not. A promise isn't a promise. Her eyes were fierce. You don't get to break it because things got hard. That's not how promises work. Colton stared at his sister, 9 years old, covered in nothing but stubbornness and love. I'm scared, Rosie. I know, me too. But we've been scared before, and we're still here. She squeezed his hand. You're going to go into that operating room and you're going to fight, and when you wake up, you're going to be okay. Because you're my brother, and my brother doesn't give up. They wheeled him into surgery at 4 in the afternoon. The operation took 3 hours. 3 hours of waiting that felt like 3 years. Rosie didn't leave Ironside's side. She sat in the plastic chair next to him, her legs dangling above the floor, and she didn't speak, and she didn't cry, and she didn't move. She just waited. When the surgeon came out, his face was different this time. Not unreadable. Tired, but smiling. We got it. The infection is cleared. No nerve damage. Jolene collapsed into Ironside's arms. Rosie let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding for 3 hours. He's going to be okay, Rosie asked. He's going to be just fine. Rosie nodded. Then she walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and cried for 10 minutes straight. When she came back out, her face was washed and her eyes were dry, and she looked exactly like what she was, the strongest person in the building. The recovery continued, slower this time, more careful. But Colton pushed through with the particular stubbornness of someone who has been given a second chance at a second chance and refuses to waste it. Week 6, he took his first step. Just one. Just with Ray on one side and the parallel bars on the other. But he took it. One step. Tomorrow, too, Ray said. Colton was crying too hard to respond. That night, he video called Rosie. I took a step. Rosie screamed so loud Jolene came running from the kitchen. What happened? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Colton took a step. Jolene grabbed the phone. Baby, are you serious? One step. Mom, I walked one step. I'm coming to see you tomorrow. First thing. You don't have to. I'm coming, and I'm bringing everyone. Everyone turned out to be the entire Iron Disciples chapter. 70 bikers crowded into the physical therapy room, filling every corner, spilling into the hallway. This is against about 50 hospital regulations, the nurse said. We'll be quick, Ironside assured her. Colton stood at the parallel bars, Ray beside him. Ready. Ready. He took a breath, gripping the bars, and stepped. 1, 2, 3, 4. He made it to the end of the bars before his legs gave out. The room exploded. 70 bikers cheering, stomping, whistling. Jolene crying, Rosie screaming. Even the nurse was wiping her eyes. Ironside pushed through the crowd and crouched beside Colton's wheelchair. "Proud of you, kid." Colton was breathing hard, tears streaming. 5 steps. 5 today, 50 tomorrow. "Then what?" Ironside smiled, a real smile. "Then you race Rosie down Pecan Street." 2 months after surgery, Colton went home. Not in a wheelchair. On crutches. The whole neighborhood came out to watch. Mrs. Caldwell, the truck driver who'd bought 3 cups of lemonade on that first day, strangers who'd seen the viral videos, and the bikers. They lined Pecan Street like an honor guard. Engines rumbling, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. Colton stood at the end of the block, crutches under his arms, Rosie beside him. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for 8 months." "Then let's go home." Step by step, inch by inch, Colton walked down Pecan Street. Not fast, not graceful, but walking. 70 engines revved in rhythm with his steps. Neighbors cheered, cameras flashed. Rosie cried and laughed at the same time. When Colton reached the porch, he stopped, looked at the spot where his wheelchair used to sit. Then he climbed the 3 steps on his own feet. Jolene caught him at the top. "Welcome home, baby." "Thanks, Mom," his voice cracked. "It's good to be standing." That night, they had a celebration. The whole neighborhood showed up. Bikers and neighbors and volunteers all crowded into the small blue house and spilling into the yard. Colton stood in the kitchen pouring lemonade on his own 2 feet. No crutches, no cane, just him. "How does it feel?" Ray asked. His physical therapist had become a close friend. "Like a miracle. A slow, painful, incredible miracle." That's exactly what it is. Later that night, after the noise had faded and the neighbors had gone home and the last biker had rumbled away into the darkness, Ironside found Rosie alone on the back porch. She was sitting on the steps, staring at the stars, her knees pulled to her chest. "Party too loud?" he asked. "No, I just wanted to think." "About what?" "About Dad." Rosie's voice was soft. "He would have loved this. All the people, the food." Colton walking again. Ironside sat down beside her. The porch creaked under his weight. "He would have loved you." "He did love me." Rosie's voice trembled. "But sometimes I forget what he looked like, his face, his voice. It gets blurry, and that scares me." Ironside was quiet for a moment. The crickets filled the silence with their ancient song. "I forget Nora's voice, too, sometimes. Her laugh, the way she said my name." He looked at the stars. "But I remember how she made me feel. Safe, loved, important. And that never fades." Rosie leaned against his arm. "Do you think they can see us, Daddy and Nora?" "I don't know, but I like to think so." "Me too." They sat in silence. 2 people separated by 43 years and connected by the exact same grief. Mr. Ironside, "Yeah, little warrior. Thank you for everything." "You already thanked me." "I know, but I mean it. Like really, really mean it." Rosie looked up at him. "You saved us." Ironside's eyes glistened in the starlight. "You saved me too, kid." "How?" "By reminding me why I started doing this. Why I made those promises to Nora." He put his arm around her. "You gave an old broken man a reason to keep fighting." Rosie hugged him. "You're not broken. You're just cracked. Like a bowl that got glued back together. Still holds everything it's supposed to." Ironside laughed, a real deep laugh that came from somewhere he'd forgotten existed. "Where'd you hear that?" "I made it up, right now. It's pretty good." "I know." Jolene called them in for cake. And for one perfect moment, surrounded by family, both blood and chosen, neither of them felt cracked at all. 3 days after the celebration, Shepard made a ride he'd been putting off for years. He rode to a cemetery in Houston, small, quiet, shaded by oaks that had been there longer than anyone alive. His sister's grave was in the back corner near the fence where the grass grew a little taller because the mower had trouble reaching it. Madison Voss, she'd been 14 when she died, bullied relentlessly for 2 years. The kind of bullying that doesn't leave bruises on the outside, just collapses everything within until there's nothing left to hold a person up. One Tuesday afternoon, while Shepard was in a lecture hall 200 miles away, learning about things that didn't matter, his sister decided she couldn't carry it anymore. He'd gotten the call from his mother. 3 words. Madison is gone, and the world had turned to static. Now he stood at her grave holding a photograph. Rosie and Colton grinning at the camera surrounded by bikers. Behind them, the lemonade stand. Behind that, the small blue house on Pecan Street. "I found them, Maddie," he said quietly. "Kids like you. Kids who need someone to fight for them, and I've been fighting. Every day." He placed the photograph against the stone. "There's this little girl, Rosie. She reminds me of you. Same fire, same determination, same stubborn refusal to let the world tell her who she is." His voice cracked. "I couldn't save you, but I saved her, and I'm going to keep saving kids like her for the rest of my life." He knelt in the grass. The earth was cool under his knees. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't see what you were going through. I was so busy being away, being young, being stupid, that I missed the most important thing." He pressed his palm flat against the stone. "But I promise you, Maddie, no kid will ever feel as alone as you did. Not while I'm breathing." He stayed there for an hour. When he finally stood, something had shifted. The guilt wasn't gone, would never be completely gone. But it was lighter, smaller, not a boulder on his chest anymore, but a stone in his pocket. Something he could carry. Something that reminded him why he walked the direction he walked. He rode back to Dusty Ridge as the sun set and the highway was gold and endless, and for the first time in 5 years, the road ahead looked more like a promise than a punishment. Colton had sent a message to Shepard 2 weeks earlier. "I want to find Preston Whitmore. I want to talk to him." Shepard had raised an eyebrow. After everything he did, because of everything he did. Colton had gripped his wheelchair arms. "I spent 8 months hating myself, blaming myself for Dad's death. It almost destroyed me. I don't want that for anyone else, not even him." Preston Whitmore was living with his grandmother in Austin. His father was in a federal facility cooperating with prosecutors. His mother was serving 45 years. Everyone he'd ever known had abandoned him. Shepard pulled up to the house on a Saturday afternoon. Preston was in the driveway shooting basketball alone. He froze when he saw the motorcycle. "Relax," Shepard said. "I'm not here to hurt you." "Then why are you here?" "Someone wants to talk to you." Jolene's van pulled up behind him. The door opened, and Colton Darnell walked out. Not wheeled, walked, on his own feet. Preston's face went white. "I wanted to see you," Colton said. "Why us?" "Because I've been where you are." Colton stopped in front of him. "You're angry, scared, alone. Everyone you trusted is gone, and you don't know who you are anymore." Preston didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. "After my dad died, I blamed myself every day. I thought about ending it, about disappearing so my mom and Rosie wouldn't have to carry me anymore." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you don't have to become what your mother was." Colton's voice was firm. "You have a choice. Right now, today. You can spend the rest of your life angry and bitter, or you can decide to be different." "How everything is gone, my family, my friends, my future. I'm the son of a murderer and a fraud. And I'm the son of a dead man. And Rosie's a kid who sold lemonade in the dirt." Colton extended his hand. "What we start with doesn't have to be what we finish with." Preston looked at the hand. The hand of a boy he'd shoved to the ground. A boy whose sister he'd tormented. A boy who had every reason to hate him and was offering forgiveness instead. He took it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know." They stood there. One boy who had learned to walk again. One boy who was learning to stand for the first time. Connected by a handshake in the terrifying, beautiful possibility of change. Shepard watched from a distance, and for the first time he understood something Ironside had been trying to teach him for years. The real fight was never about fists or weapons or the thunder of engines. It was about this, breaking the cycle, one person at a time, one hand extended at a time. Preston reached out to Jolene 2 months later, called on a Tuesday evening. Jolene answered with the wariness of a woman who has learned to expect the worst from the name Whitmore. "Mrs. Darnell, this is Preston. Preston Whitmore." Silence. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, and I don't blame you. But I wanted to ask, is there any way I could volunteer at the foundation?" Jolene nearly dropped the phone. "You want to volunteer?" "I want to help, to make up for what I did. Even a little." Preston's voice was different. quieter, stripped of the armor that arrogance had given him. Colton talked to me that day in Austin, and I can't stop thinking about what he said, about choosing to be different. And you think volunteering will make you different? No, I think actions will make me different. And volunteering is a start. He paused. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. I'm just asking for a chance. Jolene thought about everything the Whitmores had done. The stand, the quam, social services, the hired killer at 3 in the morning. Then she thought about what Colton had said about breaking the cycle, about holding on to anger being like drinking poison. Saturday, 9 a.m. Don't be late. Preston showed up at 8:45. He was nervous, awkward, out of his element, in a way that money had never prepared him for. Rosie saw him first. You, her voice was flat. Yeah, me. You're the one who dumped my money in the dirt. I am. And called my brother names and tried to ruin my family. I did all of that. Preston's voice was quiet. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Rosie studied him, 9 years old, 4 feet tall, looking up at a 17-year-old who had tormented her. Are you really sorry or just saying it because you got caught? Both at first. Preston swallowed. But then Colton came to see me, and he forgave me, and I couldn't understand why. I'd done terrible things, and he just forgave me like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. I know, that's what made it mean so much. Rosie was quiet for a long moment. Then she handed him an apron. You're on lemon duty, and if you mess up, Shepard will probably kill you. Preston almost smiled. Fair enough. He came back every Saturday, then Wednesdays too, then whenever he wasn't in school. At first, people whispered. The Whitmore kid volunteering at the foundation his mother tried to destroy. But Preston kept showing up. He squeezed lemons until his hands cramped, carried supplies until his arms shook, listened to sick children's stories and held their hands when they were scared. He never complained, never made excuses, never acted like he was owed anything. And slowly the whispers changed. Meanwhile, something else was growing. Quieter, harder to name. Jolene found Ironside on the porch one evening after a foundation meeting. The same porch where they'd sat so many times before, where he'd told her about Nora, where she'd taken his hand across the kitchen table, where two people who thought they'd used up all their chances at happiness had slowly, carefully begun to wonder if maybe there was one more. Hiding from the paperwork, she asked. Just taking a breath. He moved over. She sat beside him. The silence between them had changed over the months. It used to be heavy, filled with things unsaid. Now it was comfortable, like a room that had finally been furnished. I need to tell you something, Jolene said. Ironside looked at her. I care about you, not because you saved my kids, not because you gave us money or protection or any of that. She took a breath. Because of who you are. The real you, the one who cries at his daughter's grave and reads bedtime stories to sick kids at the foundation and pretends he doesn't like Rosie's terrible lemonade. Ironside almost smiled. It's not that terrible anymore. It's still pretty bad. Yeah, it is. They laughed, soft, quiet, the kind of laughter that builds bridges between people. I care about you too, Ironside said. All of you, more than I've cared about anything in 15 years. His voice dropped. But I'm scared, Jolene says. I don't know how to be part of something like this. A family. I had one once and I lost it, and losing it almost killed me. I know the feeling. Jolene leaned against his shoulder. But I'm tired of being scared. I've been scared my whole life, of debt, of failure, of losing my kids. And all that fear got me was exhaustion. So what do you want? I want to try. Whatever this is, I want to try. Ironside looked at her, this woman who had lost everything and built it back with her bare hands, who had fought when fighting seemed impossible, who had opened her heart to a broken old biker with nothing to offer but loyalty and a motorcycle and a grief the size of Texas. Okay, he said, let's try. And on the porch of a small blue house on Pecan Street, two people who thought love was behind them discovered it was just beginning. Months passed. The donations kept coming. The total climbed past 90,000. Jolene sat at the kitchen table with Ironside and the children staring at the numbers. What do we do with the extra? Rosie asked. Jolene took a breath. What if we use it to help other families, families like ours, families with 6 kids who can't afford treatment? Rosie's eyes went wide. Like a charity. Exactly, the Rosie Darnell Foundation. You'd name it after me. You started this baby, you earned it. Ironside spoke up. The club wants to contribute, not just money, resources, connections, everything we have. You're talking about changing the club's image, Shepard said. Ironside looked at him. Maybe it's time our image changed. The foundation launched 6 months later. In its first year, it helped 53 families, 53 children who received surgeries, treatments, medications they couldn't afford. 53 families saved from the particular drowning that happens when the medical bills arrive and the insurance says no and the world keeps turning like nothing happened. 5 years later, Rosie stood at a podium. She was 14 now, tall, confident, still fierce. Behind her, a construction site, the Nora Grace Children's Hospital, named for a little girl who died of leukemia, built by a brotherhood that refused to let her memory fade. When I was 9 years old, Rosie began, I set up a lemonade stand on the corner of Pecan Street. I didn't have a permit. I didn't have a business plan. I didn't have anything except a sick brother and a dream. The crowd listened. People laughed at me, called me names, dumped my money in the dirt, told me I was wasting my time. She paused, but I didn't give up because my brother needed me. And then something amazing happened. 70 strangers on motorcycles showed up and changed everything. She looked at Ironside in the crowd, Jolene beside him. They'd married a year ago. Small ceremony. Just family. The real kind. They weren't strangers for long. They became family. The kind that shows up when you need them most. The kind that fights for you even when the whole world says you're not worth fighting for. Her voice strengthened. This hospital is for every child who feels alone. Every family drowning in medical debt. Every parent who's ever stayed up all night wondering how they'll pay for their child's treatment. She raised her fist. For Nora, for Maida, for every child who needs to know they matter. The crowd erupted. Colton spoke next. He walked to the podium. No limp anymore. 4 years of therapy had rebuilt what was broken. When I was 11, I thought my life was over. I lost my father, lost the use of my legs, lost hope. He paused. I wrote a letter once saying maybe it would be easier if I just wasn't here. The crowd went silent. My sister found that letter, and she told me something I'll never forget. She said I would sell lemonade until I was 100 years old for you. And she meant it. Every word. His voice cracked. Today I'm 16. I'm walking. I'm alive. And every day I remember what Rosie taught me. That we're not burdens, we're reasons. Reasons for the people who love us to fight. That evening, 100 Harleys rode past the construction site. Ironside led them, Shepard beside him. And at the back, riding a custom-painted yellow motorcycle, was Colton. He'd learned to ride 2 years ago. Shepard had taught him. The thunder echoed across Dusty Ridge. Not a threat, not anymore. A promise kept. A legacy sealed. That night, Ironside stood at Nora's grave with Jolene. The stone was the same. Simple. Unchanged. Daddy's little warrior. Think she'd approve? Jolene asked. Of what? Of the hospital. The whole crazy thing. All of it. Ironside looked at the stone. Think she'd say it's about time. He placed a yellow flower on the grave. Hey, baby girl, we built you a hospital. Named it after you. It's going to help a lot of kids. Kids like you. The wind stirred the leaves. And I got married to a good woman. A strong woman. She's got 2 kids and they're fierce Nora. You'd love them. He kissed his fingers, pressed them to the stone. I miss you every day, but I'm not running anymore. I'm standing still, and I'm standing with people I love. Jolene took his hand. She'd be proud. I hope so. I know so. They walked back to the car together. The sun was setting behind the oaks, and the sky was the color of lemons and gold, and the kind of endings that are really beginnings. 4 more years passed. Rosie turned 18. College awaited. A scholarship to study public health because the girl who had sold lemonade on a street corner had decided to spend her life making sure no family ever had to sell lemonade to save their child. The morning she left, the whole family gathered on Pecan Street. Jolene Ironside. Colton, now 20, working as a physical therapist at the Dusty Ridge Clinic, helping kids like him learn to walk again. Shepard, Boomer, Mole, Ray Tillman. Mrs. Caldwell, 91, now leaning on her cane but refusing to miss this. Preston Whitmore, now a foundation board member, the boy who had once dumped coins in the dirt, standing beside the girl whose coins they were. Jennifer Walsh, who had turned a local story into a national movement, and 100 bikers lined up on Pecan Street one last time. "This is too much," Rosie said, laughing through tears. "This is exactly enough," Ironside replied. "You think we'd let you leave without a proper send-off? I'm just going to college, 2 hours away." "Doesn't matter, you're family." He handed her a small box. Inside was a leather patch, the Iron Disciples logo with something added, a small lemon embroidered in yellow thread. "Honorary member. First ever. You earned it." Rosie threw her arms around him. "I love you. I love you too, little warrior." His voice cracked. "Go change the world." Colton walked over, on his own 2 feet, no limp, no hesitation. He'd come so far from the boy who couldn't look at himself in the mirror without seeing his father's sacrifice staring back. "Hey," he said. "Hey, you're going to be amazing." "I know." Rosie grinned, and then the grin faded into something softer. "Colton, take care of Mom and Ironside and yourself." "I will. And keep making lemonade, real lemonade, not that sugar water. The recipe's perfect now, and you know it. It's acceptable, at best." They hugged, two kids who had been through the fire and come out holding hands. Rosie drove away as the sun rose. In her rearview mirror, 100 motorcycles followed her to the edge of town. At the city limits, they stopped. Engines idling. A wall of leather and chrome silhouetted against the morning sky. Rosie pulled over, got out of her car, walked back to face them. "Thank you," she said. Her voice carried across the still morning air. "For everything. For showing up when no one else would. For teaching me that family isn't just blood. For proving that angels don't always wear white." She raised her fist. 100 fists rose in response. "For Nora," someone shouted. "For Nora," the crowd echoed. "For all of us," Rosie added. The engines roared. 100 horns blared. The sound rolled across the flat Texas landscape and disappeared into the sunrise like a prayer made of thunder. Rosie climbed back in her car, wiped her eyes, started the engine. In the passenger seat, tucked into the cup holder, was a jar. Not the original one. That one was in a glass case at the foundation office, a relic now, something people came from miles to see. This jar was new, clean, empty, except for a single coin at the bottom. A quarter. Rosie had put it there herself, a reminder. Everything starts small. Everything starts with one coin, one cup, one stubborn kid who refuses to quit. She pulled onto the highway. The road stretched ahead, moist and open, full of the particular promise that highways hold for young people leaving home for the first time. Behind her, Pecan Street settled back into its quiet morning rhythm. The small blue house was still there. The porch where Colton had sat in his wheelchair. The corner where Rosie had stood with her jar. In Dusty Ridge, Texas, the small blue house on Pecan Street still stood. The porch where Colton once sat in his wheelchair. The corner where Rosie sold lemonade for 50 cents. All of it remained. All of it remembered. And on the bronze plaque embedded in the sidewalk, the words gleamed in the fading light: Rosie's Corner. Where one girl's courage changed a town, dedicated to all who fight for those they love. They called them outlaws. Society said they were dangerous. But when a little girl needed protection, when a family needed hope, when a town needed to learn what dignity meant, it wasn't the church or the government or the wealthy who answered. It was 70 men in leather who taught the world that angels don't always wear white. Sometimes they wear patches. Sometimes they ride Harleys. And sometimes the thunder of their engines is the most beautiful sound a child can hear. This is not just a story. This is a truth. Love wins every single time.